This episode contains discussions of toxic relationships, eating disorders, and an unfortunately deceased dog. So listen at your own discretion. It is Tuesday, the 28th of May, 2024. My name is Pigeon Rose, and this is my song of the day. So, continuing on the boygenius themed week, today we're going to be talking about a song by Phoebe Bridgers. Out of the three members of boygenius, Phoebe is probably the most individually famous. Her song, Motion Sickness, which is what we're talking about today, it just became pretty popular on YouTube from the music video. That's how I discovered her. It just came up in my recommended out of nowhere, and I was like, sure, why not? Looks good. And I was correct. It's a very good song. This song is the second track on her first album, Stranger in the Alps, which was released in 2017. And hopefully I remember to put a trigger warning at the start of this episode, but it discusses themes of unhealthy relationships, particularly with an age gap and manipulation and stuff. So just be aware of that before we go into it. But I don't think I really need to give you any more preamble than that. We're just going to listen to it now and then come back and talk about it. All right, let's talk about it. The elephant in the room is that this song is not a hypothetical. It's about a specific person. I don't think she said it outright at the start, but she did reveal that this song is about Ryan Adams. Now, Ryan Adams is a musician who I was kind of aware of beforehand. I knew like a few songs here and there, mostly with his band The Cardinals. He's an American musician. He's like about 20 years older than Phoebe, and he helped produce her. He produced her debut EP, Killer. And later in 2019, a bunch of people came out, including Phoebe Bridgers, to accuse Ryan Adams of abuse. Specifically, they said that he had like offered to help women with their music careers and then used it as a springboard to make romantic or sexual advances on them. And that was apparently what recording that EP with Bridgers amounted to. And so this song is about Phoebe's feelings, kind of looking back on all that. And you can, of course, take it generally and relate to it that way. There are some details that are very specific to this situation, but still the vibe of it, I think, is still generally relatable. So let's talk about it. I hate you for what you did, and I miss you like a little kid. What a way to open a song. It's a pretty common experience that abused people, at least in some capacity, miss their abuser. And that's what it touches on here with this lyric. But what's interesting is the phrasing, I miss you like a little kid, because I mean, I think that's a phrase that I've heard before, like people talking about extreme feelings, saying it's like a little kid. But because of the age difference in their relationship, that kind of has an interesting connotation to it when it's phrased that way. Then you get, I faked it every time, but that's all right. I can hardly feel anything. I hardly feel anything at all. Now, obviously, you can take this as her talking about like faking her romantic feelings for him, but also I faked it every time is such a common, specific phrase for people talking about faking orgasms. So it's pretty clear what that's about. But then it leads into, I can hardly feel anything. I hardly feel anything at all. Just this idea of numbness. Like, it's not just that I have no feelings for you. It's that I have become emotionless. You know, it just makes it that much sadder. Now, here's where the specific details come in. You gave me $1,500 to see your hypnotherapist. I only went one time. You let it slide. Fell on hard times a year ago. Was hoping you would let it go, and you did. So apparently, Ryan Adams did indeed pay for Phoebe to go see a hypnotherapist. She only went to half of the session, and the whole time she was trying not to laugh or fall asleep, which is what this whole thing is about. It's, God, what a wild thing to do. A lot of people pointing out in Genius, like, your abuser paying for your therapy session, especially one that is, like, not helpful, is a very specific kind of control. Then we get the chorus. I have emotional motion sickness. Somebody roll the windows down. There are no words in the English language. I could scream to drown you out. So the idea of emotional motion sickness is pretty self-explanatory. And the line, somebody roll the windows down, is of course a reference to normal motion sickness, which often happens in like cars and moving vehicles. What's interesting though, is that Ryan Adams specifically had Meniere's disease. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but he had this disease, one of the symptoms of which is motion sickness. So it feels like an extra reference again to Ryan Adams again, saying, you have motion sickness. I have emotional motion sickness. This is how you have infected me, you know? There are no words in the English language. I could scream to drown you out is a big oof. Certainly at the time, Ryan Adams would have been more famous than Phoebe. I feel like Phoebe's more famous than him now. Not just because he got accused of shit, but also just Phoebe's like kind of a global phenomenon at this point. But it's just such an interesting, talking about the imbalance of power, being unable to drown him out because he's more powerful, has more sway, you know. Then you get the second verse. I'm on the outside looking through. You're throwing rocks around your room, and while you're bleeding on your back in the glass. This brings up the idea of people in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. And she's saying, like, she's looking through the glass while he's throwing rocks at it, right? And he's bleeding on his back in the glass. Like, he's ruining it for himself by trying to protest against it and by trying to say that he's innocent or however specifically this is supposed to be phrased, but I think you understand what I mean. And then I'll be glad that I made it out and sorry that it all went down like it did. Now, you can kind of view this in two ways. One of them is that she's being kind of cold, like she's kind of mocking him, because often from abusers, you'll get like a non-apology, like, not, I'm sorry that I did this to you, but I'm sorry that you feel this way, right? And I'm sorry that it all went down like it did. Kind of sounds like she's mocking that, like, oh, I'm so sorry that this happened this way, that you did this to me, right? But also you can read it as being genuine. You can read it as being like the first line of, I hate you and I miss you, right? Maybe she is genuinely saying, I'm sorry that this happened like it did. You know, that kind of genuine conflict in her emotions. I don't know. Get the chorus again, but this time there's more lines. Hey, why do you sing with an English accent? Apparently, Ryan Adams, who's from North Carolina, occasionally sings with an English accent, and people have been baffled by it. It's a strange one, but it's a very specific detail to include. I guess it's too late to change it now. You know, I'm never going to let you have it, but I will try to drown you out. Again, just like trying to move on, trying to get past this, trying to get rid of his voice in her head sort of thing, you know? And then the bridge, which is really damning. You said when you met me, you were bored. You said when you met me, you were bored. And you were in a band when I was born. Really just drives home the age difference. You know, he was in a band called Whiskey Town around the time that she was born. So that's that's a hell of a thing. And then we get the chorus again, but this time it's, I have emotional motion sickness. I try to stay clean and live without, and I want to know what would happen if I surrender to the sound. Surrender to the sound. Surrendering to the sound is an interesting thing, because she could be saying like trying to drown him out, right? Like surrendering to the sound. But it also makes me think of that, like surrendering to the sound is going back to him. It's not drowning him out, it's surrendering to the sound, which is a really interesting dichotomy there. Obviously she didn't go back to him, but it's an interesting thing to bring up at the end of the song. The music video, which I will of course link down below, is Phoebe on a scooter in a tuxedo going down the street and then going to a karaoke bar and singing this song. You can tell there's a slight difference because the footage is slowed down. So even though she's singing it in time with the music, the karaoke display behind her is actually going a bit slower, which I thought was an interesting detail once you notice it. On the Wikipedia page, Phoebe says that the video was probably inspired by her brother Jackson singing Down with the Sickness to her in karaoke with 100% commitment in an orange jumpsuit, which is a wonderful little tidbit of information. Yeah, no, I love this song. It's very hard hitting, obviously. It's very emotional. It's very relatable, especially if you've had an abusive ex. It's kind of the song that blew her up, and rightfully so. It's a great song with an interesting message. I mean, musically, it's a pretty standard kind of Americana-y song, but it's just kind of a song, a rock song, a bit like soft rock song. And it's nice, and it's kind of her signature style that it sounds like, which makes sense. Yeah, that's pretty much what I have to say about Motion Sickness. Really love this song. What do you think of it? Leave a comment below, subscribe, press like, all that jazz. And I will talk to you tomorrow with a Julianne Baker song. So see you then.
Break it down.
And so oh my god, fucking alarm going off. It calls to mind the idea of people in glass houses should masturbate in the basement. I didn't even plan to say that as I opened my mouth to say the sentence.